Okay, we're up to Daf Yud Gimel Amid Aleph. Yud Gimel Amid Aleph. We have the Mishnah. We're holding by the Mishnah. And we're discussing again things that you're permitted to do in Chol Moed and things you're not permitted to do in Chol Moed. So here's the Mishnah. Ein loichim batim. You cannot purchase houses, avodim slaves, ubehem or animals, el litzarech hamayed, only for the need of the mayed. Or for someone who does not have what to eat. So it was necessary for the Moed, then what? You could purchase it, or if someone doesn't have what to eat, you can go ahead and purchase this. Now, the question is, if it's a tzarech hamoyed, we said it's anything. Why are you stressing batim, avodim, behemoths? Anything that's tzarech hamoyed, you're permitted to go ahead to buy if it's tzarech hamoyed. So if you look at Taisus says something interesting. Ein loichin batim avodim el tzarech hamoyed. Pirish harav Rav Yosef. Who adim b'shad dvarim the tzarech hamoyed, right? The asal limcha peiros el tzarech hamoyed. So what's the chiddush over here? Ella says Tosos revusa kamash malan. The afilu hani even batim avodim and behemoths that the have bifrahesya. These are very public sales. It's not like a sale you go to a store quietly. If you buy an Eved, there was a slave market, I guess behemoths, you went to the shuk to buy behemoths, a house. All of these had a lot of garida, they had a lot of noise with them. So you would think that what afilu tzarech hamayid not, kimash malon, despite the commotion that would be as a result of these sales, you're permitted to do in Chol Moed. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. Now, there was two dinim in the Mishnah. One, the Inyan wa tzarech hamayid, or if you need it, or you needed to eat, something to eat. Now, that's seems to be very synonymous. But boy minei Rav Nachman, schar peula she'ein lo ma yochel mahu. What about the schar of a peula doesn't have what to eat? Rashi points out, is a person able to go ahead and give a person work to pay him wages in order to have what to eat? In other words, the person doesn't have what to eat. Can you hire him? And as a result of hiring him, you'll be able to give him wages. What's the halacha about a schar peula, the paying of wages for a person who doesn't have what to eat? So Amalei Tanina. So Rav Nachman answered, Rava, you learned it. Our Mishnah says, in other words, there's two dinner in the Mishnah. One, you can go ahead and, if it's a tzarech hamayed, you can go ahead and buy batim avodim, and the second din, or you could sell something with tzarech hamayed if you need what to eat. What's that second din coming to go and include? Again, it seems synonymous that obviously if you're selling those things, you're buying those things, you need them. The tzarech hamayed seems to be, so it must be the second case is including something. It says, so just like you can go ahead and buy batim avodim or behemoths l'tzarech hamayed, so too you can go ahead and pay wages, hire someone to pay him be able to eat on the mayed. It says Gemara Amalei. So Rabbi told Rav Nachman, Loi, Perushi Kamafarish. It's not two separate dinim, it's one din. Let's go back to the Mishnah. Let me insert what the Gemara just said. Ein loichim batim avodim ubehema el tzarech hamayed. You can only buy batim avodim ubehema tzarech hamayed. You know why? What does tzarech hamayed mean? It means that you don't have what to eat. Since you don't have what to eat, you can go ahead and buy these things. In other words, that would go ahead or sell these things and a result. So the latter part of the mission is explaining the first part, but it's not coming to tell me a din about hiring a worker on Chol Moed for the purpose of providing food for him. Now we will go ahead and prove that you could. Esvei Abaya, says Abaya. This is the mission later on. Ein koisvin shtori chayiv b'moed. If you have a shtar, in other words, you have a loan on a person, you can't write a document going ahead and saying that he owes you money. And if you won't give him money in other words, like this, you're giving a person money and you trust the person that even if you don't have proof, in documentary proof, then it will be okay. And if you don't trust the guy, obviously you must trust him somewhat that he's going to repay you, but you don't trust him that without a document, then or a second din, or you don't have what to eat, in that case you can go ahead and write it. Now, obviously, she'ein yochel cannot be an explanation of not believing a person. I don't believe you, so I'm going to write a document. So therefore, the Gemara concludes, why does it come to include? Right? It comes to include schar pula, that one can hire someone out on the Moed for the purpose of giving him money so he could buy food. Very good. Moisev Rav Sheshes asks the following question. You've proven that you can hire somebody out on the Moed. Say, despite the fact that you're not supposed to work in Chol Moed, we're going to go ahead now, guys, and compare working Erev Pesach to working on the Moed. Working Erev Pesach on the Moed. Now, be aware that Chol Moed is more severe than working Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach, we want you to be busy preparing, as we'll see, but nonetheless, working Chol Moed is more severe. So now, the Chum say 3. Now, even though you're not supposed, even if it's a place that's noyeg, not to work on Erev Pesach, Shloshim Maniyos, there are 3 professions that even though it's a place that you don't work, these places you would work. Shloshim Maniyos, Oisim Melacha B'Erev Pesachim, who would work on Erev Pesach. Ad Chatzos. What are they? Hachayotim would be a tailor. V'hasaparim would be a barber. V'hakoifsim would be a launderer. Hachayotin, why could they work? You know why? As we saw in the previous Mishnah, a hedyet can on Chol Moed stitch, right? We saw he's a hedyet. He's not an artisan. He's a hedyet. And since Chol Moed is more severe than Erev Pesach, if a regular layman can stitch on Chol Moed, then conversely, where it's less stringent, an expert could stitch on Erev Pesach. Secondly, hasaparim v'akoifsim, because it's necessary. Sometimes people were not able to take haircuts or launder their clothing for various reasons. For example, shekein aboyim medina sayam, someone comes from overseas. Vayotzim yibeis hasurim, someone is let out of jail. Right? Mutarim l'saper l'chabes b'chol shel moed. They're able to go ahead and Chol Moed take a haircut and launder their clothing. And since Erev Pesach is more lenient than Chol Moed, if these things you could take a haircut and wash your clothing if you came out of prison or from a trip on Chol Moed, certainly on Erev Pesach you could do it, and therefore the professions of a barber and a launderer would be permitted to work in Chol Moed. Okay, so we established an Erev Pesach. So we established 3 din of Erev Pesach. 1, a tailor could work. 2, a barber could work. And 3, a launderer could work. Now, you're telling me by Chol Moed, because why? And we extrapolated these halachas from Chol Moed. Since Chol Moed is more severe, and there are scenarios where these could go ahead and practice their profession, then Mela on Erev Pesach, you could as well. Now, you're telling me now on Chol Moed, there's another heter. What's the heter? If you need money and you can hire yourself out. So says the Gemara, to go ahead and hire someone who doesn't have what to eat, to pay him money to eat. Any malacha should be permitted on Erev Pesach. Why are you designating these 3? You could have gone ahead and made it much more expansive. You could have included everyone. Because in Chol Moed, there's a Heichet Timtza where we do include everyone. If a guy can be hired out what to eat. So the Gemara is asking from that fact that we limited to those 3, it must be that why on Chol Moed you cannot go ahead and hire a person out for the person to give him something to eat. So now we're going to do the Jewish thing. We're going to ask a question on a question to disprove you. Okay? Now, Maskiv la Rav Papa. Elamayato. Binyan Lishteri, you should be able to build Erev Pesach. You know why? Shekain Koisel, we had this earlier in the Masechta. Koisel HaGoyel Rishus Rabim, a Koisel that's a wall that is leaning in the Rishus Rabim, going ahead and being a public problem, right? It might be a public problem, right? Soiser uboine kidarkoi. You're able to knock it down and build it kidarkoi mifnei asakana, because it's sakana. Maskul Ravina Elamiyata, lavlor lishteri, a lavlor, a sefer should be permitted to go ahead and practice his profession Erev Pesach. Why? On Chol Moed, you're able to write Kedushay Nashim and Gitim Shovim. So in other words, if you're going ahead and saying the following, So what's the Gemara's question, guys? Very geschmack. We're saying a statement that you're able to hire someone out in order to give him wages to buy something for what to eat. The Gemara is asking from a comparison to Erev Pesach, you should not be able to. Why? we extrapolated halachas of Erev Pesach from Chol Hamoed because Chol Hamoed is more severe. So therefore, we permitted a tailor, a launderer, and a barber to practice their profession. Why? Because you could do it in Chol Hamoed. So Fred Gemara Kasha, if that's the case, that you tell me on Chol Hamoed, you can hire someone for the purpose of giving him funds, you should be able to do that Erev Pesach. So why are you limiting to those three? You should be able to do anything. So what are we saying? The comparison from Pesach to Chol Hamoed is a little different because there are other halachas to Chol Hamoed that you wouldn't have by Pesach. So for example, a lavler, we said a scribe can go ahead, he could write Kedushin and Gittin and receipts on Chol Hamoed. And Erev Pesach, obviously you can't. And regarding a kaisel, we saw halacha, you have a wall that is being inclined into Rishus Harabim, and we said on Chol Hamoed, you're able to knock it down and rebuild it. So you should be able to go ahead and build Erev Pesach, and we know you can't. So obviously there must be a distinction between Chol Hamoed and Erev Pesach. Ella, here's the distinction. Elam Rav Ashi, Moed al Arba Asa Karamis. You're asking a steer from Chol Hamoed to Yud Daled Nisan. Moed Mishum Tirchahu. The reason Moed you can't do work is as Tircha. We don't do Matriach Chol Hamoed. Uvamakim Pseida Shayr Rabbanan. In a place where you're going to take a loss, they permitted it. Arba Asa Mishum Tzarech Yantefu. The reason why Arba Asa we don't let you do work is you should go ahead and be busy getting ready for Yantif, making the charaises and the karpas and the Karm Pesach used to be in so many different things. You got to get ready with the matzahs, making the matzahs and getting rid of chametz. Midi the tzarech yantiv shari, things that are tzarech yantiv is permitted, anything else is not permitted, right? Midi the light tzarech yantiv loy shari rabbanan, it's not permitted. So there's a beautiful ritva over here that I'm going to share with you that explains this whole inyan. Here's a ritva. Okay, it's on 2 pages. I kind of messed it up. We'll do the best we can. Okay. Now, what does it say? Here's having explained the Lashon of the Gemara. How could you have a thought, litlois inyan yontif, the inyan amayed, right? How could you go ahead and compare Yudalid, I said yontif, Yudalid in consider the Chol Hamoed? So ain't time Easter shavin. The reasons are not equal at all. The reason why Erev Pesach, the reason Chol Hamoed are 2 totally different reasons. Kitam isur malacha b'mayed hu mishum tircha. The reason of isur malacha b'mayed is because of tircha. The reason why Chol Hamoed we don't want to be tircha. And what's the reason of tircha, guys? Listen to this. So trouble yourself. Ushaloi lemayit b'simchas haregel. That you should not minimize the happiness of the regel. In other words, the reason why you can't be matriach, says the Ritva, is because that's going to nem from your simchas yantif. If I'm so busy huffing and puffing and working and stretching, it's going to go ahead and take away from my simchas yantif. Ulefi hetiru chachamim kolshu tsorech hamayed v'kolshu dava nevad, and that chachamim permitted the needs of the moyed and something that you're going to take a monetary loss. Kidei shelo yehi doyeg al aveidasai v'nimna misimchas yantif. In other words, if I can't do it on Yontif and I need it, it's going to take away from my Simchas Yontif. If I'm going to go ahead and take a monetary loss, I'm not going to enjoy Yontif. I'm worried about my loss. I can't enjoy Yontif. So the reason why the heter for Davar Avad and the reason for Tzarech Mayed is permitted is to go ahead and enhance my Simchas Yontif. That's why in Chol Hamoed I can do it. Kidei shlo yidag alavei dasai, you shouldn't worry about your loss. V'nimna misimchas yantif. V'chene tiru schar p'ula she'en le'ma yoichal. And therefore they permitted the schar for people who didn't have what to eat. It would take away from your simchas yantif if you didn't have what to eat. Aval isser malacha, regarding the isser of malacha, biyantif, eina le'mayit tareach v'amal. It's nothing to do with minimizing exertion or hard work. The chol gamahu. Your dalit is chayil. It's not yontif yet. Ve'ena tam ela kidei. What's the reason? Kidei. Oh boy. Kidei lehechin sarche yontif, to prepare your needs of yontif. Or to take care of your current Pesach in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Or bizman hazeh b'tzorchei matzah umara v'hechsha kelav, preparing your kalim, right? Preparing your kalim. Preparing your kalim. Ubir chametz kedapishis beduchte. So therefore, beautiful guys, the Ritva gives us a whole Hagdara of why this is like really an introduction to the whole Masechta. You know, let's go back to the beginning of the Masechta. Right? What's the first thing? Mashlichin beis hashlachin. You can go ahead and be mashke beis hashlachin on Chol Hamoed. When? Why? Because it's a davar avod. Since it's something that requires irrigation, right? Since it requires irrigation, if we don't let you irrigate it, it's Gedover. What's going to happen? You can, how can I get a simplest yontif? My field is rotting out. So in order to avoid that, we let you do it, provided it's not a tirchi yisera, because tirchi yisera is going to take away from your simplest yontif. On the other end, it's a beautiful explanation of the Ritva to explain the whole inyan, and that's why something tzarech hamayid, you need the mayid. So that's the reason for the Isser of Malacha on Chol Hamoed. That's the reason for the Isser Malacha on Chol Hamoed. Conversely, when it comes to Erev Pesach, there's no Isser Malacha Erev Pesach, fellas. It's Chayil, it's Mamish, there's no Kedusha to Yudalit. Elamah, it's a practical thing. In order to facilitate you being able to go ahead and take care of your needs, right? You have needs. Well, you have to go ahead, and as we saw, Bisman Beis Hamikdash, you got to take care of the Korban Pesach. And aside from that, even Bisman Hazeh, matzah, maror, getting rid of chametz, all those things. Therefore, we don't want you to work. Therefore, you wanted to compare the two. There's no comparison whatsoever. Chol Shel Moed, even though you could hire yourself out to go ahead and get some money to eat, that's because it's going to take away from B'Simchas Yontif. Mashain came by Erev Pesach, no, do with that whatsoever. Shmak, guys, huh? It's a very, 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 very nice ritva to give you a hagdara. There's the Mishnah. A mafnin. Okay, Rabbi, so you can hear us now. Okay, we're up to the Mishnah. You Gimel on the bottom. So you just Mishnah. You Gimel on the bottom. Ein mafnin mi bias lebias. You can't go ahead and go from one house to another house in another chutzner. Guys, very important. Not you in those days. We remember from Masechta Eruvin. There was houses, and in the houses, and in front of the house there was a chutzner, like what we would call a front yard. And you can't go when it says from house to house, it doesn't mean you can't go from house to house. It means you can't go from this house in this chutzner to this house in this chutzner. That's what it means. But as we're going to see, from house to house, you could go. You could go out to a house in your own chutzner. You can't. Let's say you had some stuff by an artisan, by a professional. Then you're not able mevi'in kalim. You can't go ahead and bring kalim from his house. Rashi in Nun-Hey in Psachim says because of what? It's because of tircha, schlepping it, and other people say that it shouldn't appear as if you took it to have it fixed on the moed, and therefore we don't want. So therefore, you don't bring kalim from the house of the woman in choishesh lehem. But let's say you're worried about leaving it by him; it shouldn't get stolen. Then mafnin, you could bring it out. However, l'chutza acheres, don't bring it home to your house. Bringing it in a separate chutzner. Okay, the first thing of the Mishnah that you don't go from house to house. It says the more v'amid reisha a mafnin klal, mashma you can't do it all. It's if you look at the words in the Mishnah, they seem to be contradictory. I already explained it to you. A mafnin bias the bias, but you could go from l'chatzera. What does that mean? You just told me you can't. Now you told me you could. It says Amar bias safe also the bias shebachatzer. A safe is coming for the house in the same chutzner. When the Mishnah said you can't go from one house to another house, then from one house in one chutzner to another house in another chutzner. What the second case of the Mishnah was, however, a house that's in your chutzner itself, there you could go ahead. That's not such a tircha, you could bring kalim there. They may be on kalim base umin. You can't bring kalim from the house of an umin. Omrav Papa, Badik la Rava. Rav was checking us out. Rav was giving us a bechina. It says that what you can't bring kalim in base umin. Tanam, we have a mishnah. Ein may be in kalim in base umin. You can't bring kalim, as we just said, from the professional's house. Uriminu, I'll ask you a stira. Molichin, you can bring to umevim, and you can bring from kalim in base umim, kalim from the house of an umin. Even if you don't need them. So he asks us a question. On one hand, the Mishnah says you can't bring it from the house of an umin. We have another brayso that says not only can you bring it from, you can bring it to, and eat, right? Even if what you don't need it. And he answered, very geschmack, right? When could you bring it to and bring it from? That's on your dalit, guys. If you bring it on your dalit, what are you worried about? Tircha, there's no tircha. We don't care. Mitakin your dalit, there's no mitakin your dalit. It's no issa. Chol Moed, where there's an issa already and there's a din of tircha, again, it's beautiful. The distinction between Erev Pesach and Chol Moed. Erev Pesach, where there's no problem of tircha, there's no problem of tikkun because it's chayil. You can bring it to the house of the yomin and bring it from the house of the yomin. When does the Mishnah say you cannot bring it from the house of the yomin? That's speaking right on Chol Moed. Another teretz. Both brises, our Mishnah and the brisa, are speaking in Chol Moed. So I have a steer now. One says you could bring, one says you can't bring. It says, where can't you bring is where you trust the umin, where you know it won't be stolen. Then you can't bring it. Kan, where could you bring it? Where you don't trust him. Where you don't trust him, you worry it's going to be stolen, you can bring it. And that would answer the contradiction on the days. V'hatanya, this is a proof. V'hatanya, mevi'in kalim mebeisa umin, right? You could bring kalim from the house of an umin. Kigoin, kadmi beis hakadar, a barrel from a barrel maker. The kois mi beis hazageg, and a kois made of glass from the glass maker. Avaloit semer beis hatzeveya, you can't bring wool from the dyer. V'lei kalim mebeis umin, and you cannot bring kalim mebeis umin. Okay. But if you don't know what to eat, nice and the give him money, and leave it him, pay him up and leave it by him. And if you don't believe him, then take it away from him and put it in somebody else's house, which is exactly what we said, guys, right? We said, you can bring it from him. And if you're scared it's going to get ripped away from the other house, skip the parentheses. So you can bring it home. So we brought a proof again to the stira. Again, what was a stira? One place says you can't, one place says you could. The place that you can't is where you believe the guy. The place that you could is where you don't believe the guy. And here we have a brayso that says you don't believe the guy. To Kasha, you said two dinim in the second brayso, guys. Two dinim. One, you can bring from, and molichin, you can bring to. How would you explain on Chol Moed that you can bring to? You explained, if I don't trust the guy, I can bring from him. Great. But the brayso that you're saying that brayso is speaking in a case where it's Chol Moed, if it's speaking Chol Moed, why Melichin? Why would you be able to bring it to him? Says Gemara, Taratz the Mevian, Melichin Kasha, bringing it to him on Chol Moed, you have not answered. On that, the Gemara answers, Eli Yachse Mechavarta, it's clear, Kidushnina Meikara, the first teretz. Can be Yomtiv. One speaking Chol Moed, can be Yadalid, and one is speaking on Yadalid. When could you bring to and from? That's on Yadalid Nisan. When can't you bring? That's Chol Moed. We're rejecting the teretz of Ma'amino, Sheina Ma'amino, because of the lashon of Moelichin that you could bring to, which that does not go ahead and translate to. Very geschmack. Final mission of the parak. Again, discussing Chol Moed. Mechafen es haketziyos. If you have cut figs, ketziyos are cut figs, they're drying in a field, and you're worried they're going to get ruined in Chol Moed. So you're able to mechafim, cover them up bikash, with straw to protect them from the elements. Rabbi Yehuda says, af ma'avin, you can even make them thick. We'll see what that means. Moich second in, moichrei peris ksus v'kelim, merchants who sell fruit, clothing, and vessels. Moichrim b'tzina l'tzarech hamoed. If it's tzarech hamoed, they can sell like b'tzina, like with a sign, you're only allowed in with a mask, like very, very clandestine, a little, unter and tish, like little, the door is not totally open. Hatsayadim, people who capture birds and fish. Vadashushais, those are people who crush grain. Vagrusais, those people who crush beans. Oisin bitsina, they can do it bitsina l'tzarech hamayid. Okay, now that can be one of two ways. They're machma not to do it at all, or they're machma, they really could do it without anything, and they're being machma. We'll see. Now, pligi bar Avchia bar Abba for Avasi. So we have a machloikus in Rabbi bar Abba and Rabbi Yossi, and both in the name of Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. Chadam and mechafin. When it says mechafin, that you can cover up, that's aklushe. That's to take branches and thinly cover it up. And ma'abin, and the lashon of thick, it means asmuche, cover them totally with branches. So again, the Mishnah said two dinim. It said mechafin and ma'abin. The Gemara is defining mechafin is being loosely covered. The branches are a little spread apart, and ma'abin, lashon of thick, it's thickly covered. And the Chadamar, one says bein aklushe, bein asmuche is you can cover them totally with the branches. So what does ma'abin mean? And ma'abin is oisasa kimin kri. You pile up the figs on top of each other and you cover them. It makes it easier to cover since they're all in one area. That's one pshat. A second pshat I saw is that you cover them up with the itself, and therefore most of it will be covered. It's a thick covering of the dates, or the figs are a thick covering. Tanya nami hachi ma'abin oisesa kamin kri. It's like the second pshat. You make it like a kamin kri again. Two pshatim, either pile them on top of each other or pile them together and then cover them. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. The next thing of the Mishnah was Moichrei Peres Ksus V'Kelim Moichrei B'Tzina L'Tzarech HaMoed. Now Iboilahu. And then Rabbi Yossi said Hinech Mir Alatzmain. What does that mean? Hinech Mir Alatzmain D'Lei Havi Avdi Klal. They were machmir, they didn't do it all. Idilma the Havi Avdi B'Tzina. Or maybe they did it B'Tzina. Let's see Rashi learns the Shai. Let's see Rashi learns, guys. Hechmiru Alatzman. In other words, they were machmer not to open the store at all. However, in other words, what's the chumrah over here? Everyone else, guys, did bitsina, and they were machmer not to do it at all, or everyone else did it fully open, and they were machmer only to do it one. That's the question. What's the chumrah? 0 from 1 to 0, bitsina to 0, or no, fully open to 1. That's the shaila. What did Rabbi Yossi mean? That's the more shaila. Tashma, let's be pushed to the shaila. Moichrei peres ksus v'kelim, moichrei bitsina l'tzarech hamayed. They can sell mamish with one door, bitsina, one door open. Tagrei Tveria, the merchants of Tveria. So we're placed the shaila, guys, right? They're being machmir to the 0. The capturers of wild animals, oifis v'dagim, sodem b'tzina l'tzarech hamoyed. Rabbi Yossi Omer, tzadei akoy, heinech mir alatzmi shleiyet sodem kol ikar. So therefore, we placed the shaila that they did it b'tzina, and Rabbi Yossi was machmir not to do it at all. The Shushay Chilka Tirgis Vitisni, those people who were threshing, and we'll see what all these terms mean. Chilka Tirgis Vitisni, Doishnim Bitsina, they would go ahead and thresh Bitsina, Litzarech HaMoyed, Rabbi Yossi Omer, the Shusi Tzipuri Hinech Mir Latzman, Shlei the Shishma Kolika didn't do it at all. So clearly, you place the Shaila, everyone didn't do it normally, everyone did it Bitsina, and Rabbi Yossi's Chumer not to do it at all. Now, what we just gave 3 terms, Chilka, Targis, Vitisni. And guys, this is speaking about wheat, and it's crushing wheat to make cereal. And there's different ways it can be crushed, right? This is like, like you get the orange juice you have with pulp, without pulp, right? So this is the different types of cereal. Rabbi, Chilka is chadul tarti. Chilka is like it sounds, divided. The wheat kernel is divided into 2. Targis, chadul tilsa, a third. Tisni, chadul arba, a quarter. And it's all speaking about what? About wheat. Kiyas Rabbi Amar, kunsa spelt. It's speaking about spelt, and spelt was not divided at all, guys. So two dinim that Rav Dimi is different. He's arguing two things. One, it's not wheat, and two, it's not split. In other words, he says that he says that this is speaking about kunsa, which is spelt, not wheat. Two, spelt is not split, and wheat is. So he's arguing two dinim. Meisivei, chilka targis v'tisni, tameim b'chol makom. Now, to go ahead and to split this, you'd have to soak it. Where in order for something to be mekabel tumah, it needs a preparatory step. The preparatory step would involve one of 7 liquids falling on the foodstuff. So, if it's one of these 3 things to be split, it's mekabel tumah. It must be that it had been prepared by having a liquid fall upon it. So now, Bishlein says 1, 2, or 3, or 4, right? Mishum hachi tameim b'chol makom. Why? The is kasher, of course, it already had been prepared by having a liquid on it. Kunsa, like Rav Dimi, who brought this from Eretz Yisrael, that it was kunsa spelt, which again doesn't have to be split, guys. In the Havaminiv, it doesn't have to be split. There's going to be no water on it. Amay tameim b'chol makom. Since it wasn't split, it never wet. Since it wasn't wet, it's not muksha. It's a kashan Rav Dimi who said that chilka tisni is speaking about kunsa. Says Gemara, no, going to miklafin. It's speaking about the spelt was peeled. You took off the outer husk. In order to get off the outer husk, guys, you had to get it wet. And Mela also, it was prepared for Mekabel Tumah because for getting off the husk. The lav dishorilu b'maya. If not that you soaked it in water, like havi miklafa, you won't be able to peel off the husk. Why was it called chilka? The shakal chilkeu. You took its smoothness, right? You took its smoothness from it. Mesidek. We're going to ask now on the one who says kunsa, on the one who says spelt. Guys, dagon means grain, but dagon means you heap it up. It was the way to take grain and heap it up together. That's called dagon. By nedarim, we go after what people call the lashon of people. So, for example, if a person would go ahead and say, "I'm making a neder not to eat meat," bisman hazeh, would you eat chicken or not? Would you be able to eat chicken? Ostensibly, I'd say no, because we say meat, we mean meat. We don't mean chicken, right? That when we say meat, we think about meat. If I'd say bisman hazeh, I'm going to ask that you can't eat chicken, you would be able to eat duck because you make the distinction. It depends upon the lashon of bnei adam. So with that in mind, two akdam is dagon is piled up, and by the daron we go after the lashon of bnei adam. Let's get to the kasha that will slug up that chilka is kusna is spelled. Hanoida ben adagon aser af bepula mitzri. Someone who says he won't go ahead and make a neder and eat dagon, even though dagon is usually the 5 grains, right? Wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats. Over here, he'd be asa to eat pula mitzri Egyptian beans, yavish that are dry, because people call that dagon. Umutta belach, he'd be permitted to eat moist beans. Umutta ba'oires, he'd be permitted to eat rice. Bechilka, he'd be able to eat chilka, v'targis v'tisni. Well, Bishlein madiyama chadla tarti chadla tlas chadla arba. That chilka targis v'tisni is also speaking about wheat and different state of it's being separated. Shapir, why that you be mutter? Why the nafklei mitar is dagon? Because when something is split, you only piled it up when it was whole. Since it wasn't whole, it's not piled up. Since it's not piled up, it's not part of my neder. Elamadi of a kunsa dagon ma'al yehu. Like the magdalene with spelt you'd pile up. Kasha in achnami it's shver on the Rav Dimi who says that chilka tigger is kusna, right? Because again, you should be usher and you're not. Rav Huna shari lahu hanu kurpaisa. He permitted these kurpaisa lemezel zvune kirchaya v'shuka. These were people who sold spices, and he permitted on Chol Moed to sell their spices. Eser Rav Kahana chanus psuchel l'stayav. A chanus that's opened up to a bench area, meaning it's a smaller area. It's an area that's not so open. They could open 2 doors. But if it's a chanus that's open to Rishus Harabim, only 1 door. And on Shmini Atzeres, to be able to take out and adorn the streets with peiros, which will cover Yontif Achron because of the covet of Shmini Atzeres. If they covered Yontav Achron in, Shlem they covered Achron Moed. So how could he go ahead and sell spices on Chol Moed? Paris, you would be able to go ahead and open up and sell, but for Hesya, but Tavlin, which didn't have such a shelf life, it seems, that you would not be able to do. So therefore, he was upset at him. The next year should be from Yerushalayim Kodesh. Hopefully, everything goes well. If not, it'll be tonight at 8:15. Okay.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip. Hope to